The minute that I walked in, I got a huge adrenaline rush in my legs and I felt that real fight or flight. So I think the first thing to do with self-trust is to listen to your body. And when you get a message like that, like stop, and if you possibly can, take a little step back to observe. Hang on, why is my body doing this?
If you're actively seeking ways to build your mental toughness, navigate life transitions with grace, or simply find inspiration to keep moving forward, then you're in the right place. Welcome to the Art of Beautiful Thinking podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Art of Beautiful Thinking. I am Kat and this is Yvette, and we're a bit excited today
We are.
because one of our beautiful subscribers, Suz, has actually sent in a request for us to discuss a topic. So she's asked if she needs to know more about learning to trust and act on your spidey senses and ways to reset so that you can learn to trust, you get that self-trust back. How can you re-engage those self-trust things inside yourself so you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, you know that you are on the money with what you're saying. So we're gonna pick this one apart today. So Yvette, go.
Oh, go, whoa. So what does self-trust mean? I suppose that's what it really comes down to. And now for me, self-trust means that I don't question myself when a decision needs to be made. Even if I feel slightly uncomfortable, like if I'm getting an inner urge to go in a certain direction, even if I feel uncomfortable with it, it's to trust that
Yeah.
my guidance knows best and to follow through with that. And there's also this thing about just having this inner joy and peace as well, just feeling centered, regardless of what's actually going on around you. And
Yeah.
the other aspect to me is even if your environment is saying to you, like I'm going to put it out there to say, oh, I don't have a lot of money. And so you keep focusing on not having a lot of money. But if
Yep.
you trust in the fact that you know that money is going to come to you in one way or another, and these opportunities will present themselves to you, then you're open to allowing that into your life, right? And so trusting that that's going to happen rather than trusting in the fear that this is what my environment is dictating to me,
Yes, yes, yeah.
if
Or
that
other people
makes
are telling
sense.
me, other people
Yeah.
around me are saying things to me, how does that work? Self-trust, I think for me for you, it's sort of very much a spiritual feeling in a sense, and I get that too, but for me, it's a bit more about energetic stuff, and also it is a bit more information that I'm getting in my brain as well. So like I'll notice things around me, and I think the older you get, the more you tune into that cognitive dissonance when things don't feel right, when someone's saying something and their expression is different. You know what I mean? Micro expressions, energy, self-trust for me is something that I cultivate it. And a lot of it comes down to if I have an interaction and I go away from that interaction and something keeps popping up in my head. Have you ever had that?
Yep. Yep.
A line from what that person said will keep repeating in my head, or something they did will keep repeating in my head. And it's like my brain will keep bringing that up and saying, you've got to look at this again. You've got to look at this again. And then I'll look at it again and I'll go, yeah, oh, now I get it. Or it's not second guessing myself. It's like the pieces dropping into place in a puzzle, and when you're getting those kinds of vibes and when you're sitting back and asking those kinds of questions, that you need to follow down that track.
Yep.
That's self-trust. Not
Yep.
when you go, oh, let's do an example because it's easier to say an example. So I might say, I felt really uncomfortable when I had that conversation. We had that conversation with that guy. Didn't you think that what he was saying and his face kind of didn't match, or it was weird? Like he said
It was
one thing and then he
incongruent.
said
Incongruent. Yeah.
incongruence. And
Yep.
if your person or your confidant that you're trying to use as a sounding board says, "Oh, don't worry about it," and I'll go, "Nah, I think I'm going to follow that up because that doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right." Whereabouts in your body do you feel those energetic sort of niggles that tell you that something's not on? Where do you feel it?
Well, it depends. It depends on the situation. But a lot of the time, if I get a very uncomfortable in my gut, if I feel uncomfortable in my gut, or
Yep.
the other thing too is all of a sudden my head gets really heavy
Oh, yeah,
and I
that's
feel like
interesting.
I'm getting a headache, they're usually signs to me that something's not right.
Yeah, yeah. I get
Yeah.
tightness in my neck when someone is exhausting me.
Yeah.
or draining me, I know that person's not for me. Yesterday, I had to go and help a friend. She's having a dispute with her neighbour about a fence, and the counsellor involved. It's very ugly. We'll go along and assist and just be there and give you some support because she lives on her own. And anyway, we rock up. And the minute that I walked in, I got a huge adrenaline rush in my
Mm,
legs,
mm.
and I felt that real fight or flight. Now that rarely happens to me. And I thought that's weird. So I think the first thing to do with self-trust is to listen to your body. And when you get a message like that, like, why am I getting in a massive adrenaline rush and my legs are shaky? Why is that happening? Stop. And if you possibly can, take a little step back to observe. You know how we can be in our brain and we can be in our emotions
Yep.
and things are happening and we go, and then you were saying earlier that makes you react. But
Yes.
if you take that little step back and go, hang on, why is my body doing this? What are they presenting to me? What is their energy telling me? So I stepped back and I looked and I went, council lady's clearly good friends with old mate that's disputing. She's also looking very intimidating towards my friend who is very emotionally upset at this point. And old mate over here that's got nothing to do with proceedings is walking towards me and looks like he wants a confrontation. And that happened within a split second. That's how fast your brain will process that. So I think some people in that situation, when you've got people trying to intimidate you and trying to carry on or trying to intimidate your friend, can get very emotional and caught up in that straight away. And so I think taking that moment to step back and observe your feelings, the vibes that they're giving you, and really getting into your own body, really asking yourself, where am I feeling this in my body? I was feeling it in my heart. My chest was feeling
Yep.
tight. My legs were feeling shaky. So I stepped deeply into my hara. And I always do this when people go to confront me. When you're in those kinds of situations when it can be quite emotional, that's the biggest thing, is trusting yourself to react in the way that will keep you safe, keep you protected, and will also allow you to be yourself and express yourself authentically. Because I think that's the biggest thing. When we don't trust ourselves, we second guess everything that comes out of our mouth. We can clam up or we can worry, and that will take away your power and your capacity to manage.
Oh, absolutely. And it's interesting how when you don't trust yourself and you second guess, that's where confusion comes in.
Yes.
You get
Yes.
really confused,
Yes.
and then it doesn't matter what decision you're trying to make. You're kind of going, I don't know. You're questioning everything,
Yes.
absolutely everything,
Yep.
and that just says you're not thinking clearly, and it also says to me very very much so that you are not trusting yourself at
Yeah.
all.
Yep.
Usually, the first thing that comes to mind is the correct thing, and then
Mm.
what happens, especially if it's come up from your intuition, and then usually it's the mind that starts questioning it, like the ego mind that starts going, oh, but, what about this and what about that? Or fear or doubt
Yep.
comes in and you start questioning it again.
Yep.
And the only reason why fear and doubt come in is because it believes fear and doubt is telling you that you don't have the answer.
Yeah.
And so that really, again, is a form of not trusting yourself because you believe that you don't have the answer, when in actual fact, you do have the answer. And whether that answer is correct in that current situation or not, who knows? But you
Yep.
do have an answer. And
Yep.
even when you don't make a choice, you're still making a choice.
Oh, yeah,
So
for sure.
I would much prefer to be taking on my first intuitive sense
Yep.
of what to do
Yep.
than to actually question it. But mind you, I have questioned it in the past. I have found myself getting into a spiral of, but what if, but what if, but what if?
Yep. Yep.
And that's when I feel like I'm the cat that's shoved its paw into a socket and I've got that fuzziness happening. I just feel like "Ugh," going on. You know when you're not centered and when you're not actually trusting yourself. You just feel totally out of whack. Yeah,
You do. You're all over the place. Your head is a mess.
exactly.
You feel shit and you lose your focus. And when that's happening, that in itself is a big sign to say whatever it is going on around you, your body, and everything is trying to say this situation's not right. So look further, dig further, turn in and say, okay, what is going on? Why am I feeling that way? And I think one of the ways to trust in yourself and restore yourself that way is to give yourself a bit of space and a bit of
Mm.
time. This is something that I learned actually with you through AOBT, is at the end of the day to stop and reflect, because we don't do that. We don't give ourselves, particularly if you've had a really difficult situation, stop and reflect and ask yourself the question, How did that go today? Or if there's anything you're feeling uncomfortable with about that interaction. I had another example, if you don't mind me telling another story, Eva. I
Go.
was in Fremantle on the weekend in Perth, and I went to the Fremantle markets, and there was a lovely, beautiful young girl there and her mother. And this man came over that was clearly known to her, and he ran his hands inappropriately all over her body. He was grabbing her and touching her, and when she squirmed away, he was touching her more. And then he was like, it was just gross. It was gross. It made my skin crawl, and it just immediately got my hackles up as a mum. And I turned to her mother and I said, "Why is that man touching your daughter like that?" She's looked over, and it's like the colour has drained from her face. She's gone, "Oh, God." Her daughter looked uncomfortable, but was sort of trying to be polite. And I think it dawned on the mother that this was really inappropriate,
Yeah.
like horribly uncomfortable. This man said in a loud, loud voice as he walked away, he gazed into the girl's eyes, "I love you," and then walked away. The whole thing gave me a visceral reaction of, like it was just horrid, horrid, horrid,
Mm.
horrid. And I've worked with sex offenders. I know a groomer when I see one. Anyway,
Gosh.
I turned to the little girl and I said to her, "Thank you so much. Your handiwork is beautiful. Also, I just want you to know that if anyone ever touches you in any way and makes you feel uncomfortable, whether that be tickling, in fun, whatever, if you're uncomfortable, you always can say, 'Don't touch me.' That's for
Yeah.
your whole life. Never, ever let anyone touch you when you're not comfortable." And she just looked at me like I had, you know, shown her the secrets of the universe. It was clear that no one had ever had that conversation with her. I've thought about that a lot since. But I absolutely know in that moment, I did not question for 1 second whether I should say that to the mother. And I did not question for 1 second whether I should say that to the girl. I knew in that moment I had to say it to the mum and I had to say it to the girl.
Yeah.
And I have no qualms or concerns. I completely trust my judgment in that moment that what I saw and the way that I responded to that was what they needed to hear. And I think a lot of that has come from getting back to myself, meditating, doing the mirror work, spending more time in my own company, listening to my own thoughts, not being afraid to turn inward, because I think we all avoid turning inward because it's like the last great frontier.
Well, you've got to face yourself when you turn
Yeah.
inward. Yeah.
And once you do that, you achieve that I'll say self-mastery. I think it's a journey of self-mastery because who knows if we ever get there, but self-trust comes from knowing yourself well and once you know yourself well, you know your intentions. You get to know
Yeah.
who you are as a human. So I would never have said anything like that to that woman for any other reason than to protect that girl.
Yeah. Well, I mean that looking inward. If you look at the ancient rishis, etc., it's actually called self-realization, and
Yeah.
that's really how I see it. It's about realizing of self, who you
Yep.
truly are at the core, and that you are more than what the mask that you present to the world.
Yeah.
There is so much more that you have within you, and when you do turn within and start to trust within yourself and start to like who you are,
Yep.
then you can see things for what they actually are. But the other thing that you pointed out was about taking a step back when a situation is happening and become the observer,
Yeah.
and not the observer necessarily of how everyone's interacting. You can do that as well, but mostly the observer of yourself, of how
Mhm.
you are interacting.
So
And
powerful.
is this who you want to be when
Mhm.
you're interacting? Do you
Yep.
think you could actually change your state of being in that situation straight away?
Yep.
And I remember Louise Hay, I think it was her that had said it a long time ago in one of her books, that when you're questioning yourself about things, or when you're doubting stuff, or even if you're finding yourself in a particular situation that you feel uncomfortable, is you ask yourself the question of, what would love do right now?
Mm.
And you're not talking about love of lovey-dovey, you're talking about the essence of love. What would that essence of love do right now?
See,
And
I think that's a really advanced level that you're at doing that, though. I don't feel like I'm advanced enough. I'm only still
but when I first
fledgling.
came across that information, I wasn't,
No.
I don't consider myself advanced now. I still consider myself a white belt, right? But I was at a different level back then. And that to me, it was quite powerful because it was something that I could use, even though I didn't fully grasp it. I would still say to myself, what would love do? Because you're asking yourself a question.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you ask yourself a question, and especially if it's quite a powerful question, You're going to
Mm.
get a very good answer to that
That's the
question.
ultimate powerful question,
Yeah.
really, isn't it?
So you're
Mm.
asking yourself a question of what would love do right now, and then that's going to stop you in your tracks, and you're going to
Yes.
go, love would actually do this.
Yeah, it's gonna kick hate or anger out the door, isn't
Yeah,
it? Mm, mm.
absolutely. So even though you may look at it and go, oh, but that's such an advanced thing, it's not. It's just a question. You're asking yourself a powerful question to basically reframe your mind in that time frame, like in that situation.
That's really clever. That's a really clever technique because 'cause you're saying what would love do right now to stop you from making a rash or foolish choice or to do something out of anger or something that you will later regret. Because love isn't always and I think we need to make this really clear to our viewers. When you say what would love do, you don't mean to be lovey-dovey, you don't mean to
No,
just, or cave or be
no.
a doormat
'Cause
or let things go.
sometimes love actually requires you to go, stop right there. You know,
Absolutely.
it's
Yep.
just, yeah, especially if your boundaries are being crossed
So sometimes love can be, I'm going to lovingly tell you in an assertive way
to fuck
and make
off.
it, yeah,
Totally.
lovely tell you in an assertive way to fuck off. Yes. Welcome to Australia. This is how we do things here.
Or it could be the whole thing of calming a situation down. And sometimes that calming the situation down could just be you being calm,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
not
I
telling
think,
the other
yep,
people to calm down, but you
yep,
yourself being calm, which all of a sudden, as you've said before, if we are shooting off a frequency, because we do, we're all like these little radio antennas and we're
we
picking
are.
up on these different frequencies,
Yep.
that if you're shooting off a frequency that you are at peace and being present and being calm,
Mm,
then that to me is a higher frequency
yeah.
than what anger, frustration,
Oh, yeah. Hell
sadness
yeah.
is, and
Hell
it'll
yeah.
totally lift it'll
Everything.
lift the mood in the
It'll
space.
lift the whole interaction, and I've
Yeah.
found that it works again to make you unstoppable and invincible in those situations. So, whilst everyone else is getting worked up or distressed or angry or hateful or whatever, I had that same thing yesterday. The neighbour said to me, "You're hating on me," and I immediately, my immediate reaction was to go, "What?" With, I think this is something that I came to realize as an older person. It took me a really long time to figure this out because I do think I'm a bit autistic, and I'm very much what you see is what you get. So I don't tend to attempt to manipulate
Yeah.
or do little power plays because I can't be asked. It didn't
Yeah.
even occur to me that that was such a thing until I've experienced it a lot. So quite often when you're having uncomfortable conversations, what I've learned is that people that are cunning, which there's often an inverse relationship between intelligence and cunning, often throw things out and say things to you simply as a power play to see if they can throw you off balance.
Mm.
And the antidote for that is to be so in your own space of self trust that when they throw out things like, you're hating on me, you look at them and go, what? And
Yeah.
they go, oh,
When you look at it from that point of view as well, you're kind of going, well, for one, I'm not going to react in a
yeah,
negative way to that.
no.
I'm asking you a question. What do you
What do
mean
you
by
mean by
that?
that? And they go,
And
oh, yeah,
And then they go, "Oh, okay." And so then it becomes again their stuff, and they can handle their stuff on their own. And
correct,
but you're just
correct.
being you in that present moment, yeah.
Yeah. And that's how you
And
handle
being
that sort of
grounded and
level of
centered
conflict.
in yourself
Yeah.
ultimately.
Because I think a lot of times people use these kinds of words because that's the other thing I was going to like hopefully say to Suz is that um, if you're not trusting yourself, you also need to look at the people that you're surrounded by as well. Do the people that generally surround you on a on a daily basis, are they quite supportive of you? Are they good people? Are they your tribe? Or do you cop it a lot from people that are trying to unbalance you or undermine you because those kinds of people are the ones that like to try and wear away at your self-trust and wear away at your own
Mm.
understanding. If you have got people like that around you, the thing that will annoy them the most is improving your self-trust to the point where, again, they can chuck all kinds of words out and you just go, "Mm, whatever, man."
I think it can even be simpler. I mean, yes, you've got that of the people around you, but I think you've also got the component of if you've been. I'm going to go back to being raised in a domestic violence upbringing.
Oh, yeah.
Um, that can create a lot of distrust in yourself as
Yes,
well. You
yes.
question yourself with a lot of things,
Yep, yep.
especially as a child being raised in it.
Mm.
And then when you get older, it becomes, and I know for me, some of the first things that I was working on around the personal growth side of things was around starting to trust me and starting to like
Yeah.
who I was. And that, I think that's really the first step of trusting yourself, is to like you
Yeah, yeah,
and to
absolutely.
trust the advice that you give yourself rather than
Mm.
questioning the advice. And I look at it and I go, do you question advice when you give that to a friend?
Yeah, that's
You know, when
another
a friend
really good
comes
way to
to
look at it.
you for
Mm.
advice, you don't question, you just give them advice, and you don't question the advice that you're giving them, you know,
No, no,
and
of
they
course.
either choose to take your advice or choose not to.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then when we are giving our own advice to ourselves, we question ourselves.
Yeah, why is that? That's really interesting that we do that, isn't it? Because the other thing I've noticed is I have a good friend who's very good at when I'm struggling, I'll go, I'm struggling, oh, and she'd be really, really super encouraging and positive. And I'll go, thank you, I feel so much better now. And then I'll do the same for her, but she will write off everything I say and discount it under the whole, yeah, no, I'm not good enough to receive that.
Yeah, and that comes back again to self-love,
Yeah,
respecting yourself, appreciating yourself, you know,
yeah,
that relationship with self.
yeah,
So, what is that relationship with you that you have with yourself? Are you your own best friend?
yeah,
And
yeah.
do you talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend? And obviously, you know,
Mm,
if you are questioning everything, then the answer is no. You don't talk to yourself like your best friend.
that's a
So
massive shift. Mm,
it really comes back to, again, becoming the observer of
yep.
how you are treating yourself and how you are talking to yourself. And then when you
Mm.
catch yourself, when that awareness comes in and you catch yourself, is to reframe the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Because just looking at it from a positive view and viewing yourself through a positive mindset rather than a negative one doesn't change the situation at all. It doesn't change the facts, but it absolutely changes how you feel about the
Mm,
situation. It reduces your stress. It allows you to think clearly. It makes you feel good about yourself. It's empowering. It builds your confidence. Like there are no downsides
no.
to doing that.
No. And the other thing you mentioned was that self-reflection at nighttime. That's another really powerful thing to do, is
Yeah.
to look back on your day and look at any conversations that you may have had that may have been, if you believe that there was a bit of conflict there, or
Mm,
something that made you feel uncomfortable,
yeah.
or you were learning something and then doubted yourself. I
Yeah.
kind of went, I can't do that. Like, reflect on your whole day and go, what could I have done differently? How
Mm,
could I have had a different conversation there? Or
mm,
how could I have spoken to myself differently about that new skill that I'm trying to develop? How can I look at it from a different perspective rather than looking at it from with my little sunglasses on
yeah.
and trying
Yep.
to see life through these old ideas,
Yep.
these old beliefs that aren't actually serving you? And so you start reflecting on it and going, what could I do differently? And then the next day, take one of those things that you've decided to do differently and start implementing it and see what happens. Treat it,
Yeah.
and I always say this, treat it like an experiment. Don't take it so seriously. Play with it. Play with
Yeah.
it and
Tweak
see
it.
what happens.
Yep.
Like if you're actually having, you know, there was a bit of conflict at work and there's someone that's upsetting you a little bit, look back on it and go, okay, how can I interact with that person differently?
Mm.
And then interact with them differently the next day and just see what happens.
Yep.
Look at and observe how they start treating you differently if they do, or if they treat you worse because of your change in interaction.
Yep.
Just play with it and see how it actually goes and keep tweaking it and keep
Yeah.
tweaking it and playing with it. And usually I have found that if I come from that place of, well, what would love do right now, and get myself present in that feeling,
Mm.
the whole situation ends up
Just
dissolving itself
dissipating. It
anyway.
just dissipates because there's no energy given. There's no, negative energy thrives on negative energy. So the more you
It
do it,
does.
the more worse
And
it
so if you
gets.
don't feed it, you don't
Mm.
give it anything. And the same goes when you're talking to yourself.
Mm.
If you
Mm.
don't feed the negative energy, you don't
Yep.
feed the negative thoughts, then they've got nothing to go on. So if
Yeah, absolutely.
you
And that's
replace
the
it with
same.
something else.
Yeah. And self-trust, I think also it becomes like all of the work that we've talked about and that we do is the more you do it, it's like a muscle. It gets
Yeah,
stronger and stronger and stronger.
exactly.
You get to the point where you can hear that little quiet inner voice. It becomes quite loud becomes quite loud because I went to make a phone call yesterday and I thought, should I make that phone call? And I clearly heard, no, don't do it. Right,
Yeah.
okay, I'm not doing it. And that's how you go when you first start. The little voice is very quiet, reflecting, sitting there of an evening, like you're saying, thinking about your interactions in the day. And if one I think a sign that something is really that hasn't worked or could have been done differently is if it keeps coming back up in your thoughts,
Yeah. It
because
means more
that's
work needs to happen. And we spoke about this as well with when you were talking about going through the forgiveness process and how when you're going through a bit of a breakthrough, the physical body has to catch up,
oh,
with
yeah, I was so
the
exhausted.
changes that you've
Yeah.
happened through the brain and through your emotions.
Mm.
It has to all catch up. And it's the same thing that when you're doing work on yourself of getting rid of old patterns of thinking, your body's response to
Yes.
things has to catch up. So sometimes you'll find that there will be incongruency between the brain or your emotion and the physical response, which is what you felt the other day. Your body was telling you, run,
Yeah.
get out of
Get out of
here,
here. Mhm,
but your inner
mhm.
self was going,
No,
get
I can
grounded.
handle it.
You can handle this. Yeah.
Yep,
And that's where the two need to come into alignment still with
yep.
each other. And that's normal. That's quite normal that as you start removing old identity of who you are and replacing it with the real you,
Mm.
then everything else has to play catch up. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it does do that, and I think we're all on a growth journey, no matter what we
Oh,
do, so
constantly, whether we
the
like
other
it or not.
thing yeah, exactly. I think the other thing, that I probably would recommend is also, like, Suz has referred to this as spidey senses, which
Yeah.
I've definitely used in the past. I think the older I get and the more, crabby I become, I refer to it as witch sense because I'm turning into an old crabby witch. But your witch senses get even stronger as you get older if you
I
take
just
the
refer to
time.
it as my gut instincts or
But yeah,
I've always referred to it as my instincts or my intuition. That's
yeah.
how I
Intuition's
look at it.
probably the nicest word, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
stick with witch sense because I just love it.
Whatever works for you, call it whatever you want.
So I think also, don't beat yourself up as well is the other thing because if you are a person who can tend towards a little bit of overthinking or a bit, get a bit sort of get a bit caught up with things, don't beat yourself up about it either. Allow
No.
yourself that space and allow yourself the time to, as you're saying, make changes and let your mind and your soul kind of catch up with your body and give yourself a bit of a break because it's really important work and it's simple work, but it can be taxing.
Well, it can be, and you always feel. I think one of the things that can happen when you're doing a lot of personal growth as well is to look at yourself and go, "There's something wrong with me,"
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there isn't actually anything wrong with you.
Yep.
All it basically is the old programming and all the stuff that you've identified with so far in
Mm.
this lifetime that you're holding on to, you just need to let go of. And some of that stuff you've held on to for a long time. And so
Oh, yeah.
it's become quite comfortable. You know?
Mm. Yes,
It's it's
absolutely.
it's got its little tentacles stuck in you. And so you need to pull those tentacles out. And each time you pull one of those tentacles out, it can be quite painful and it can bring up a lot of things. But when
Definitely.
you replace it with something better, with a new experience, a new feeling, because if you were to go into a situation that normally you would react to, or say you're not listening to yourself, and then you start to listen to yourself and you find that the situation or circumstance starts to change and it changes for the better, that builds confidence.
Mm.
And you
Mhm.
start to build confidence in yourself. So you actually have to take those little steps,
Yep.
make those small changes, play with it, experiment with it, and then that will start to build that confidence in you. As you
Yeah.
said, the muscle starts to grow, right? And so
Yep.
you're building that confidence. And that's what you want to keep feeding that confidence. Don't keep feeding the little negative beast, keep
Yeah.
feeding the confidence because that's what's going to help you with your self-trust. And
Yep.
then when you start doing that, you connect more with your intuition.
Yeah, you do. You
You
do.
connect
Yep.
and you are able to hear it a lot more clearer. So it's
Mm.
always there. It's always talking to you. And sometimes it could just be a whisper because your ego personality is louder
Mm,
than
mm.
the inner guidance is.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But once you calm that down, that becomes quieter and this becomes
The
louder,
voice
but always
becomes so
louder in a
loud.
calm, nice way.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you don't wanna get to a point where because you're not listening to it, you get hit by a 4 by 2, you know? It's like, that's what happens.
Yes,
So,
we don't wanna completely
you know, we
switch
don't
off.
want that. Now, some of the other techniques that you can use as well to help you really connect with yourself and start to repair that relationship with yourself is mirror work. You know, mirror
Mm,
work again is something that is quite easy to do, but oh boy, it's powerful. And so
yep.
many people I know when they first start mirror work, always it's the avoid. No, I can't.
Me
No, no,
included.
I can't do that. I can't do that. Me included. But then once they've started the process, and especially after the first months, they go, "Oh my god,
Yeah,
that was
absolutely.
amazing."
Yep,
And you do
yep.
feel really stupid at first, but then towards the end of it, it
Yeah.
just becomes a habit,
You feel
and
stupid because you
it's
don't
fabulous.
value
You don't
yourself
value
enough.
yourself.
That's why
Yeah,
you feel stupid. Once you realize and then you start to value yourself, then you don't feel stupid because you actually really do deserve to look yourself in the eye in the mirror and tell yourself that you love yourself and actually feel that. Yeah.
exactly.
It's just
Genuinely
so
feel
frowned
love
upon.
for who you are. Yeah.
It's
And again,
frowned
we're
upon
not
in our
talking about
society.
lovey-dovey love or, you know, like being narcissistic, that type of selfish love. We're
No.
talking
But I can
pure,
remember as a kid,
pure
that
love.
was an insult, wasn't
Yeah.
it? That was an insult. "Oh, you really love yourself." Like, that's how we grew up. "No,
Yeah.
this you love
Yeah.
yourself, you're in love with yourself." Yeah, I am. Because
And
if
that's
I'm not,
okay.
then yeah,
Because
exactly.
trust
And
me too, you have to actually love who you are to get really good self-trust
you do.
and to really listen to your spider senses.
And some people do find it quite upsetting. So you may find that's the other thing you may find as you make these changes because your energy changes and your reactions change. Even if it's only on kind of an energetic level, people will sense it. And if you've got kind of some people around you that don't particularly like that or aren't comfortable, you may find that you rub people up the wrong way with it a bit too, because they're
Yeah.
unable to throw their little words out, do their power plays, whatever it is. And you
Yeah,
just
and
go,
it drops
yeah,
away. It actually drops away.
yep,
And, you know, and we've spoken about that before, that when you are on a totally different frequency, um, then these situations tend to go away.
go
And they
away.
don't necessarily go away immediately because,
Mm, of
again, the environment has to catch up with
course.
where you're
Yep.
at now. So
Yep.
there may be some stuff that is basically unwinding because of the old behavior,
Yeah,
and that
yeah.
stuff is still having to, you know, finish its cycle, and then it'll
Yeah,
go
and
away.
the shifts
Yeah,
happen. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Meditation is another one.
Mm,
And again, when I, you know, mentioned about the Indian rishis talking about self-realization, how do they do that? They did that through yoga practices and meditation.
yeah.
And the yoga practices of the old days weren't the thing of going in and doing hot yoga and all that type of
Mm,
thing. It was actually properly breathing into a particular move as a form of contemplation and meditation.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that self-realization that comes through certain breathing as well.
Yeah,
So
that's
there's
huge.
all of these things that, you know, the ancient, um, mystics or ancient metaphysical sciences as such, they knew all of this stuff,
Yeah,
and
they
we kind
did.
of lost it along the way. Now we're trying to
Yeah, because
remember it all.
both, the allopathic approach and that kind of approach are both true, and they can both exist at the same time.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, that is amazing for building self-trust is to speak to a wise coach. Run your ideas past the coach, that someone that you trust, who you know has got good judgment, or you think, yeah, they're definitely a trustworthy person, and say, well, this is my thoughts on the matter. What do you think?
Mm,
And a good coach will say to you, yeah, okay, well, I think you got this right, and this is really good. You maybe need to tweak this a bit. Or they might say, well, yeah, I think that the way you handled that was really amazing. And it's certainly extremely good for your self trust to have
it
someone
is.
else who's wise that you trust that coaches you on this stuff, because you can do a lot of work on yourself and work at your self paced study. But coaching is like the light speed version. It
Yeah,
pushes you forward, at an incredible you make quantum leaps forward when you do
you
that stuff.
can, because you're taking someone else's wisdom and knowledge to help pull you up.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
And if
absolutely. It
they
works
if they
quite
agree
powerfully.
with yeah, if they agree and they're a trusted wise person and they go,
Mm,
"No, I think that you actually did the right thing. I think your decision was good. I think your logic was sound and you should trust yourself." That's
mm,
very validating, and that really does help you to rebuild, because that person has no other goal than to help you become the best version of yourself.
exactly.
Mm, yes.
Yeah. I think the other thing is trying to remain centered is another aspect of it. And
Mm.
you get that being centered when you do actually um, appreciate who you are as well.
Yeah.
But in the early stages, when you're building that up, what's some of the things that you can do to do that? Now, some of the stuff that I used to do was to what I refer to as the 747 breath. So I would breathe
Mhm.
in for a count of 7, hold it for a count of 4, and breathe out for a count of 7. And that worked for me quite a lot when I was being nervous about certain meetings or going in for interviews, or even if I knew that I was about to walk into a conflict
Yeah.
type of conversation, and I was preparing myself for it. It's even
Mm.
good to just calm the nerves down. Like, say you may be going on stage to speak, or you're going
Yep.
to a social function, and just doing that for 3 cycles of the
Mm.
breathing in for 7, holding for 4. But when you're breathing in, breathe it in right down into your belly, and to the lower, like what we refer to as the hudder, and hold,
Mm.
putting your hands down there and just feeling it, breathing into that and holding
Yep.
onto it, and then letting it out. And when you're letting out, you're actually letting out all of the unsettled feelings, all of the you know all of the issues, and you're taking out whatever situation it is that you
Mm.
are concerned about, and you're just letting it go out of yourself. And
Yep.
then you're breathing in peace and calm, and holding that into your center, and then
Mm.
just feeling yourself getting grounded in whilst you're doing that breathing. And when you come out of that, it just totally changes you. You are just so
Mm.
calm and
Yep.
grounded that when you come into any of those situations that we were speaking about, it's like water off a duck's back. It doesn't bother you
Mhm.
at
Mhm.
all.
Don't take any of it
And
away with you. Yeah,
no,
it really does work like that semi-permeable happiness bubble.
it's-
We'll let the
and you
good
can get
things
it
in, the bad
immediately. As
things
soon as
bounce
you
off.
do that, you're immediately centering yourself. You're immediately going in as well and feeling you're in a, because regardless of what's going on around you, there is always a part of you that is always centered and at peace, always, behind everything. And you can
Yes,
sometimes notice that it's like there's this little thing observing you. And that's what I refer to as your inner D. Yeah. So that's what Louise Hayes used to call it. I decided to pick up on it. So her inner divinity. And it's just observing. And that thing is it's always there.
it is always there.
It's
If you can
always watching. It's
if you
your
can take a
guide.
step into it, it's amazing
Yeah.
because
It's who you are at the
gives
core.
you a little buffer as well. Like if you're in an emotional situation or if it's all becoming too much, feeling overwhelmed, and you can step back into that, it just gives you that little bit of a buffer between the emotions and the situation. And then you can observe yourself, and that takes you out of that spiral and
Yeah,
starts bringing you back down again. It is a really good technique. It's amazing to do that.
it
But
is.
yeah, having that capacity to observe yourself and the situation and to, like you say, come from a position of love you can't really get it wrong. People might
No.
not and people don't have to agree with you, but you're not really gonna get that wrong, that
No.
situation, because you
And
know
it's
you're
not,
doing the right
and
thing.
that's the other thing about it as well, is don't look for validation outside of yourself.
That was what I was
The
gonna go to next.
the
Yes, yes,
validation comes from within.
it does come from within, and it's okay to sit in a room full of people who completely disagree with what you've got to say, and you can go, "Okay, well, I'm not gonna flog my dead horse, but I still know that that is the conclusion I've come to after working through it in a logical fashion. I actually think that my conclusion is correct, and
Yeah,
I'm not gonna say anything to the people to try and convince them of otherwise. But I know what my position is on that, and you can quietly just sit in your own space of self trust.
exactly.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm,
So I think on that note,
yes,
we've probably said quite a bit. There's so much more we could go into around self-trust, and it's not a
huge.
journey that happens overnight. Like, don't expect that, "Oh, I'm gonna start doing this today and tomorrow I'm gonna trust myself." Um,
Yeah,
it's something that it's a muscle that you build,
yeah,
and it's something that gets stronger over time, and before you know it, you'll reflect back and go, "Wow, I don't
yeah.
react
That's
to
right.
situations anymore at all."
It
There's
sneaks up
there's
on
nothing
you.
there. Yeah.
Mm, mm. Yes, it does. It sneaks up on you, and it's not really a reset.
No,
It's more of a
it's
direction
a
change.
process. Yeah.
Mm, mm.
Yeah. And that's why I think being committed to your personal growth on a daily basis is really, really important.
Huge,
Yeah.
huge. It's the one thing that will keep you going, and it's the nice thing about it is no one can ever take it away from you. That
That's your
growth
thing.
that you have, it's yours. It's inside you. It's intrinsic. It doesn't matter what anyone does. That is yours. Mm,
Absolutely.
mm.
So thanks everyone for listening to us. If there is something that really caught your attention out of today's episode, please let us know. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. We would also love for you to join our Art of Beautiful Thinking community page
Yeah.
on Facebook. And if you've got any questions or just be part of the community and share some information, by all means do that. And
Mm.
of course, subscribe
Yeah,
to our YouTube channel, because that's going to really help us to be able to get our message out there and ignite more people.
for sure. Absolutely. And we love it when you send us questions, and we love it when you ask us to pick something apart. Please feel free, because we love it.
Yes. So remember to think beautifully and live brilliantly. Until next time, guys, take care.
Bye.
We'd like to say a huge thank you to our incredible audience for your continued support. Our mission is to ignite your spark, empowering you to be a beacon of light for others. We'd love to hear from you. So if you've got any questions that you would like answered in future episodes, or just want to share some insights, connect with us on our Facebook community page. If you're looking for additional resources, go to our website. You'll find the link below. And remember, the absolute best way to help us grow is to share this episode with your friends and family, and to subscribe to the Art of Beautiful Thinking podcast. So until next time, think beautifully and live brilliantly.